You said it's a stepping stone, it's not a roadblock. Can you explain the difference to us between those two?
For me, the difference between a stepping stone and a roadblock is all about perspective. This sounds so cliche, but looking at a glass half empty or half full.
Welcome to the Leadership Laboratory podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Oh my gosh, we are still in the early episodes of this podcast and have had such an enthusiastic response, and that makes my heart smile so big because things that look easy from the outside in are often a reflection of the hard work from the inside out. So I am so thrilled to know that this podcast and these messages are landing for you listeners. Please keep your feedback and your reviews coming. And here we are again today with a phenomenal woman who is courageously stepping into her own leadership style through experimentation and with support. She encountered some hiccups and challenges along her way, and she is here to share the raw details so that hopefully you too will be inspired by her story and catalyzed into action. So Emily Zanto is joining us today. She is a process engineer and project manager at Anvil Corporation. She has spent 15 years mastering the oil and gas industry. She is passionate about continuous learning, about helping others boost their technical confidence, and making a positive impact. Basically, Emily is like a Swiss Army knife of talent, and she pairs a high IQ with an even higher EQ. And as you'll hear, time with Emily will leave you feeling a bit smarter and even more loved. On weekends, she's wrangling adventures with her husband and their two curious cutie pie daughters who are ages 6 and 11. Please welcome the one and only Emily. Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, the leadership experiment that we are addressing today is about finding a seat at the table and not just finding it, but owning your space at that table in an admittedly intimidating environment at times. Emily, can you paint the picture for us?
Yeah, owning the seat at the table has taken a many years, and it's always a growing opportunity. I've always built my confidence in the background and starting in the conference room with my peers and meetings, trying to find my seat at the table, trying to figure out how I can contribute positively to the environment and building up through my peers to working with management. And ultimately, currently, I'm on the board of directors at my company. And so that has been the ultimate experience of finding my seat at the table. And it's just been an amazing opportunity.
And being on the board of directors at your company, is it true or false? You were one of the youngest members to be invited?
That is true. It was a really kismet opportunity that came about. The board of directors is consisting of primarily external members, and several years back, they thought it would be who else to provide the best information about the company rather than a direct employee who currently works for it and not somebody who's on the executive leadership. So through that, I was able to be nominated to serve on the board as the employee representative, and it has been an amazing opportunity. And yes, I am currently the youngest member on the board.
Excellent. And I love hearing you talk about, I mean, you speak with such eloquence, confidence, just a sense of belonging. And I know you worked hard to get there. You were intentional about your approach, about your preparation for the meetings. And Anvil is sure lucky to have you in that seat in that room. Can you tell us, Emily, what was the before of that like? Before you have this ease and this confidence, how was the
Yeah.
feeling of joining a meeting like that?
Yes. Well, there's a lot to build into that because you say Anvil's lucky to have me, but I'm really lucky to have a company like Anvil who really fosters true culture, growth, and commitment. So it's been like a partnership to build. I joined Anvil straight from college, being that naive new engineer who has not a clue what they're actually doing. They got their degree and they don't know quite where they're going to fit in. But through the years, Anvil has helped build my confidence. You always challenge yourself with that imposter feeling of, do I truly belong at that table and have I earned my spot here? And so that's the biggest item that I think worked through my career is trying to make sure I truly recognize that I do belong at the table, and I've worked really hard to get there. And mastering those concerns of, should I ask this question? What does it sound like if I ask this question? But as I've developed it through the years, I've realized, if you go in through with a lens of curiosity and you're always open for a learning opportunity and you can always improve your situation and your networking capabilities, no question is too far to be asked. And it just continues growth always. So the before was certainly like feeling that imposter, but now I'm embracing those moments of uncomfortableness and feeling like an imposter. Like maybe I don't belong at the table, and then wait, stepping back and saying, yes, I do belong at the table. Why don't I ask questions and how I can learn to fit in more, or how I can learn to apply this to my day-to-day activities?
I love hearing the self-awareness and the humility in what you're saying, Emily, and just your courage and bravery to challenge those thoughts that we've all had at times. Do I belong here? Should I speak up? And, to your point, to say, well, yeah, why shouldn't I? Right? I mean, they
Exactly.
invited you to be there, or, companies that anybody's working for, they're paying you. They are exchanging money
Yeah.
for your ideas. And so it's up to you to share those ideas, even if they're not well formulated. And, that's one of the things that struck me about you right from the first time I met you. And, we were interacting within one of the programs inside the leadership laboratory. And you said, well, I'm going to practice speaking up here. And the first time you did, you spoke up and then you said, what, wait a minute, let me do that again. But it was such a great learning experience for you because you did it in this safe container. You even, just like you did right now, you laughed and you said, "Okay, it's all right." Like that element of not taking yourself too seriously in the right space. Once you're in the boardroom, the preparation behind that warrants a different type of behavior and executive presence, but you were always so quick to dive in and experiment and essentially just like get out of your own way to take the step and to speak up, even if the words weren't well formulated in your head yet.
Thank you. Yes, that first, so I did participate in your 3 pillars of leadership, and that first introduction across the room with 8 new women that I've never met before, I went to introduce myself and I flubbed completely on my words, and I was sitting there kicking myself, and I thought about it for days on end afterward, and then the next meeting, I was like, "You know what? These ladies are all here to learn and develop their leadership skills. They're not judging me. They're going through probably the same feelings, and you know what, let's learn from that and apply it." And just having that openness and awareness of, you know what, you can make mistakes or your thoughts can't come out so eloquently as you thought, as you intended, is okay. And yes, and there is certain presence that you have to maintain, and preparation is key for that, certainly. But in training and opportunities like 3 pillars of leadership, that's what that course is there for, to teach you those. And that's when I really tried to learn and harness that skill and apply it.
Yeah, and you practiced it, right? And that's so key, is that we sometimes take for granted that talking and communication are synonymous terms, and they're not. Talking is a behavior that we all know how to do. Communication is a skill, and it takes practice. And your leaders, Anvil, and I know Diana was instrumental in making an introduction between me and you, to say we see the potential, right? We see the opportunity that we have here in Emily. We're going to support her here and encourage her to participate in to the fullest, and you did. Would you say that that was a turning point, or how did that feel to be nominated and then dive in head first? And you had one of the most record-setting turnaround times. I remember in hearing about it, approaching your leader and saying, "I wanna do this," and getting back to me and saying, "I'm in."
Yes. Well, one of the fellow board member on here at Anvil, Diana Hoff, she connected you and I and nominated me to participate in your 3 Pillars of Leadership program. And it was so amazing. And I was so excited for that opportunity because I felt like that was that gap I was missing on how can I be confident in the room I'm sitting in and at the table I'm at. And having that opportunity was really what solidified me, and being able to bounce other ideas off of other pivotal women in my career that I've encountered, and also working with my father, who is another chemical engineer and a project manager in the industry, has been an amazing opportunity and has really helped turn that level of confidence that I've always missed to owning it.
To owning it, yeah. And I would challenge that slightly to say that confidence was always there in you. You just figured out how to tap into your system.
That's correct. Yes. That was not a key characteristic that I would put at first at the table. It was always in the background and I never paid too much attention to. And I just shifted the light toward it and now I'm embracing it more often.
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps, Emily.
See?
How valuable do you think it is to have a support system? I mean, you mentioned Diana, of course, and your dad, and you're a leader, and we've got Dina Lund in the mix too, who's going to be a future guest on the podcast. Were some of the obviously the relationship with your dad? I mean, you were part of the Lucky Embryo Club there, but with the professional connections, were those ones that you intentionally cultivated?
Initially in my career, I don't think I would have said I intentionally cultivated those relationships and finding people who really cared about developing other individuals. I guess I didn't recognize it until I started encountering people like that. And then it made me so much more aware of it. And I actually try to apply those characteristics to people I encounter, those fresh new engineers out of college who are really quite intimidated, not quite sure what they're doing, and, relating back to them on, hey, I remember sitting at that table and not feeling like I belonged, or how did I get through college? And now I have this big girl job and I'm supposed to perform every day and answer questions. That's really intimidating. And having these key relationships really is pivotal to help build you up. My dad, we work together here at Anvil and, being able to bounce ideas off of him and asking questions or saying, hey, this is a challenge I'm encountering. What if I were to approach it this way? And, being a dad, he can be like, do you really think that's the appropriate? Maybe you're looking at it the wrong way. Whereas if your supervisor may not have had as much transparency in giving you that feedback. So I certainly think being able to work with my dad has been the biggest gift in my career.
Yeah, that was such a blessing to have him as not just a father, but as a colleague. And,
Yes.
it's interesting as we talk about networking and cultivating relationships, it's so important to continue to build your network because parents will love you unconditionally, but managers, leadership will not. And it's up to you to tap into the EQ, right, that we talked about in your introduction as well, and take time to be intentional with those relationships. And also realize, and I love how you shared this from both perspectives, that people who are successful and mature in their career and humble, they know that they did not get there on their own. They got there with the help of support and mentorship. And when they help you or you reach out to them to say, hey, will you have a coffee with me? Can I bounce these ideas off of you? Can I ask these questions? Oftentimes, they're more than happy to pay forward what they received, which is now what you, Emily, are doing for those coming up behind you. And it's such a virtuous circle that starts to build.
Yeah, it's really quite amazing. I love that you refer to it as a circle because as you're passing on the knowledge and the techniques that people have shared with you, they're learning from those techniques and hopefully one day that they can pass those on as well. And it just continues to build the next generation. And it's really cool to think about the long-term impacts of that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a legacy. It's a lasting legacy.
For sure.
So, as you were building your network, exercising your voice, getting your seat at the table, and doing it with confidence, did you experience any roadblocks, or did anything unexpected come your way, which we might interpret as a setback or something where there was a life story presented to you and there was a lesson that you were meant to learn?
I think you're gonna always encounter roadblocks, and it depends on how you approach them, whether you make them significant roadblocks or they're stepping stones to jump to the next opportunity. For me, the biggest, and I'm gonna call it a stepping stone, not a roadblock, was navigating motherhood and being a successful professional, and learning that those are not mutually exclusive. Like they can sit in the same room and you can do both of them well. I can be a fantastic mom, a loving mom, a supportive, present mom, but I can also be a professional and I can continue to grow out my career. And just recognizing the situation you're in, does that foster that growth and does that allow that or are you being forced to choose between the two? And recognizing maybe I am being forced to choose between the two and is this where I want to be in my career? And when you don't want to choose between the two, what are new opportunities you can open up and encounter. And that was stepping away from the wrong situation into a situation where the culture allowed me to prioritize motherhood and my career simultaneously was the most awakening. And I will always make sure I'm put into a situation where I can thrive with both facets.
Absolutely. And I remember you were very honest about when we initially started working together, there was a you had your eye on a big prize. And then some things happened and you very strategically and honestly said, "You know what, Jamie, the plan has changed. My stepping stones are ultimately going in a different direction." And I really admired your courage and your honesty with yourself to do that. And it's also just that it's such great evidence, right? Of when you set a goal, the goal isn't necessarily to reach that goal, but if nothing else, it is to force you to set sail toward that goal. Because until you start moving in its direction, you're not going to learn anything new. You're not going to find out whether you enjoy it or whether you don't.
Yeah, that is another roadblock that has been very prevalent in my life this year in 2025. When I started the 3 pillars of leadership, I my goal clearly to you was this is a title I want to work toward. I'm going to do everything I can. And then my dad, my coworker, my confidant passed away unexpectedly, and I recognized that okay, careers are amazing, but is career number one. And what I've evolved, my ultimate goal is not necessarily a title anymore, but it is making a positive impact where I'm at. And I haven't given up on that goal, but I have shifted how I want to get there based off the life journey that I was not anticipating this year. And it's been really eye-opening, and it's allowed me to be more present in the moment and appreciate the challenges of the day or the challenges of the week or just my feelings around what I'm working on and how I can incorporate some sort of passion toward it.
Yes. And how wonderful that you work for an organization that has a culture that supports it and recognizes what a life change that was for you.
The culture that I currently work in is just absolutely amazing. It just thrive. You're allowed to thrive and you're allowed to work through challenges but yet you're still contributing, and it's allowed me to grow in many different ways, and I love that, and I appreciate all the opportunities that I've encountered in this culture.
Healthy cultures are something to be sought out, cherished, valued, and how great that you're investing back into that culture.
Yes.
And I
Yeah, culture is amazing.
and I want to rewind to something that you said, Emily, because I want to make sure that listeners hear your reframe on this and how powerful it is. You said it's a stepping stone, it's not a roadblock. Can you explain the difference to us between those two?
For me, the difference between a stepping stone and a roadblock is all about perspective. This sounds so cliche, but looking at a glass half empty or half full. Obviously having my dad pass away is a terrible experience that is life-changing, but taking that opportunity and learning what he's taught me over the years as a professional and as my dad, and changing that perspective and how to allow that to help me versus hinder me has been the key. And that allows you also to look through life with a lens of curiosity and to grow from that. And so I want any roadblocks, I want to change them into stepping stones and see how I can grow from that and how I can build off of it and not let that hold me back.
It's your perspective, as you said, and you choose your perspective. And I hear so much growth mindset in that, and a really healthy means of working through your emotion, because when you are overcome with emotion, it can be so hard to see clearly or to see different stepping stones, to see different paths. And it's so encouraging and so inspiring, Emily, to hear you share that and to communicate it with such clarity.
Thank you, Jamie.
Well, to our listeners here, if you could recommend an experiment based on scenarios that we're talking about today, being at the boardroom, looking at the stepping stones instead of the roadblocks, flexing your confidence muscle, leading with it, if you could encourage them to experiment with something, what would you suggest?
I think the best thing to experiment with is asking for candid feedback and be prepared for that candid feedback. It doesn't have to be all positive. It can be areas of opportunities or simple things like that. And don't be afraid to tackle that, explore that, and say, okay, how can I do this differently, or and how can I grow from that? The candid feedback to me, has been the most pivotal in my career. And asking for any of your colleagues, whether it's a peer, whether it's a supervisor, or even asking the fellow board members of, hey, where do you think I have the best room for growth? And taking that to heart and exploring that. And that I think is key.
And that it takes courage to do that.
It does. It Nobody likes to hear when they have an area of opportunity to grow from. But if you look at it objectively, you can say, you know what? That is a fantastic point I never thought of. I'm going to take that and try to incorporate that and learn from it. But at the same time, you can also take some of that feedback and say, you know what? I was having a really bad day that day, and maybe the words didn't come out the exact same way I wanted. I'm going to give myself grace, and I will recognize a situation like that in the future, but that does not need to dictate how I change completely going forward.
Yeah, and I hear your ownership in that coming through loud and clear, humility and ownership. And it's such a paradox with feedback because, you and I and the high performers that are a part of our community, we often get frustrated when we ask for feedback, and so we say, "Oh, it's fine." Well, it's fine. You're like, "What? Don't tell me it's fine. Like, tell me what I can do differently or better, right? I want to improve." And I remember, and I think it was the timing was interesting because I think it was like right before one of your one-on-one sessions with me, and you had received some of that. I'm gonna call it spicy feedback, and
It was spicy.
and it might have also been combined with the day that you just you weren't in your best headspace or heart space, and so it felt that much more amplified and magnified. But I remember as you worked through it and we talked through it and you separated the emotion and the logic, it allowed you to step into a leadership characteristic, and it had to do, and I'm being intentionally vague here, but it had to do with a management problem that you were working through, a managed opportunity that you were working through, and you were able to shift and reframe your thoughts and work with the parties involved through a much more informed lens and something that really showed leadership in your executive presence.
Yes, exactly. It was a tough, candid feedback to hear. I didn't necessarily agree with it. There was a lot of situations at play, lack of commitment, lack of performance, but higher expectations, and how did we come together and making it have work so both parties can achieve the ultimate goal, because at the end of the day we did have both goals and they were the same. So just working together with different personalities and different communication styles was the key to recognize.
And spicy feedback, I mean, it never feels good in the moment. But when you take the time to process it, you seek out your support system. And when you can use it, there again, you just turned a roadblock into a stepping stone.
Exactly. I still think about that spicy feedback on a frequent occurrence and make sure I'm not putting myself into that situation again, and I'm applying the learnings from that. So maybe I didn't necessarily agree with 100% of what they said, but it kept that awareness so that I don't continue to make that situation occur.
Yeah, you're earning a return on that feedback.
That's a great way to say it.
All right. So the experiment here is ask for the candid feedback.
Yeah.
Listen through a curious lens and reach out for support if it's a little too spicy and you need some help or hint through it, which we all face from time to time. Right. And any other reflections or anything that you think is important for our audience to know, Emily?
Let's see. Opportunities can be present even in the simplest situations. Going to dinner with a new coworker for a girls' dinner can present the biggest situation that you would have never encountered. So what I mean by that, we had a new president at the company, and she was visiting each of our branch offices, and she took all the females in our small office out to dinner, and we were just sitting down to dinner having a great conversation about our career experiences, working in operations, working in the engineering sector. And it was a fun environment where we were just talking. And that opened up the door. I got on her radar, and she was like, hey, you know what? I think this could be our next candidate for our employee board representative. And it was the most unlikely situation, but I used that opportunity to network and just show who I am genuinely, and it was a great opportunity that I wasn't even aware.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the advice is say yes and show up as authentic you.
Exactly.
Emily, you are so inspiring. I've got just one last question for you here. Was it out of your comfort zone to be here today?
Yes. You know me so well, Jamie. Yes, it was. I'm not the most extroverted person, so sitting on a podcast is a new opportunity for me.
And are you glad you did it?
Easy. Yes, I'm so excited to see it.
Well, you are an amazing guest. I don't think anyone would have known that you are a first time podcast guest. You scored some massive courage points today, and lucky us to be here in your presence and to hear your wisdom. Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a glowing part of the community at the Leadership Laboratory and a gift to all who surround you. Today's episode, I will share from a heart centered space, is dedicated to Toby Erickson, to Emily's father, who is no longer with us, but whose love and legacy are everlasting. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. Come on over to the Leadership Lab community if you'd like to talk about this in a live setting. It's at jamiemckinney.com/lab and use promo code podcast for $100 off of your membership. Until next time, listeners, keep experimenting, keep growing, and focus on progress over perfection, those stepping stones instead of the roadblocks.